Growing up as kids, we always hear the story of the hairy man. The story goes the family was traveling through and their youngest son fell off the back of the wagon. They didn't realize it and they kept going, and he pretty much grew up in that area with no family as a feral person, covered in hair, and people would encounter him traveling through the Chisholm Trail. He was said that he would be hanging in the trees and his toenails would scrape the tops of the canvases of the wagons. I actually found a book that was written by the local postmaster in the area, and he goes on to tell a story of these high school kids that were hanging out in the area, and one of the kids, he ends up getting stranded out there on Hairy Man Road around midnight, and he's forced to walk back to town on Hairy Man Road. He claims that he was approached and encountered a large hairy man, and he had to outrun this hairy man and get back to town.
I'd like to welcome Eric to Bigfoot Crossroads. Eric caught my attention very recently, this past week, and he has a YouTube channel called Media Palace, which I'm sure he'll tell you all about, but he has some very interesting videos there that I've been checking out, and I encourage you to go check them out as well. Eric, man, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Matt. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, so you're from the Austin, Texas area?
Yeah, Central Texas, pretty much born and raised. My family's been here for a really long time, and just been hanging around the Austin area.
So how did you end up getting interested in Bigfoot?
Oh, man, yeah, that's a great question. It kind of started with when I started noticing some weird stuff taking place in my hometown of Williamson County here, which is just north of Austin. And we've always kind of had this myth or this mythos of the hairy man. And I grew up hearing about the hairy man Road. There's actually a road called Hairy Man Road that comes right through town. And we grew up hearing that as kids, never really thought much of it, just figured it was a story that they would tell kids to, keep them entertained while driving on that road. But growing up and after, kind of hearing people's encounters and some other strange things going on, I started digging into it. And that was around 2018 when I started researching the area, and all that information that I gathered ended up becoming my first documentary, The Beast of Brushy Creek. And in that documentary, I was able to actually find the true story of the hairy man and how Hairy Man Road got its name. Growing up as kids, we always hear the story of the hairy man, that it was a group of frontiers people traveling on the Chisholm Trail. The famous Chisholm Trail runs here where I'm at, where they used to run cattle up north. And the story goes the family was traveling through and their youngest son fell off the back of the wagon. They didn't realize it and they kept going, and he pretty much grew up in that area with no family as a feral person, covered in hair, and people would encounter him traveling through the Chisholm Trail. He was said that he would be hanging in the trees and his toenails would scrape the tops of the canvases of the wagons. This is the story that we grew up hearing. Obviously, it's exaggerated, and who knows what all could have been true.
Sure.
But while researching for my documentary, I actually found a book that was written by the local postmaster in the area. And he confirmed, it's written in the book, saying, there's a lot of stories about Hairy Man Road got its name, and this is the real story. And he goes on to tell a story of these high school kids that were hanging out in the area. We have all their names. And one of the kids, his name was Shorty Caldwell. He was actually the star football quarterback of Round Rock High School at the time. He ends up getting stranded out there on Hairy Man Road around midnight, and he's forced to walk back to town on Hairy Man Road. This is before it was named Hairy Man Road. And he claims that he was approached and encountered a large hairy man, and he had to outrun this hairy man and get back to town. The next day he got to school. talked about it with the other kids there, and it pretty much caught like wildfire. Everybody was talking about it. And shortly after that, there was a man who was opening up a store off of Harryman Road, and he wanted to get some postage and some paperwork that has his address and all that stuff on there. So he went to the post office and he said, "Hey, I'm trying to get some stationery. What's the name of this road here? It's just a country road." And the postmaster says, "Oh, I don't know the real name, but everybody calls it Harryman Road." And so he thought that was hilarious. And he went down to the courthouse and trying to get the official name. And he comes back into the post office laughing. And he tells the post office, the postal worker there, he says, "Well, it's officially called Harryman Road now." But it wasn't without some controversy there. A lot of the old timers did not want that road to be called Harryman Road. And why that is, we can only speculate. But in the book, it explains that one of the older residents of the area, his name was C.D. Folks. There's actually a school named C.D. Folks in the area. That shows you how much of a person he was in the community. He fought tooth and nail to get it changed. He wanted to get it changed to Fern Bluff Road because he told the people that had named it, "Be careful because you're stepping on hallowed ground." Which I always thought was kind of weird when he kind of said it like that.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And the Harryman Road is actually surrounded. The majority of it, a good part of it, is surrounded by a ranch that's been there for generations and generations. And I should probably explain, where I am in the Central Texas area, we're part of the Balcones Escarpment. And the Balcones Escarpment is like a mini Grand Canyon. It runs from San Antonio almost all the way up to Dallas. It's actually visible from space.
Wow.
Full of creeks and crevices, caves, a lot of limestone caves everywhere. And there has been people living in this area for centuries. I believe it was in the 1970s they found right off of the Brushy Creek. At the time, it was the oldest complete skeleton. And they dated it at 13,000 years old. It was just some woman, and she was an ancient Native American. Shortly after that, while they were constructing the highway here, I-35, again off of the Brushy Creek, they had found some Indian burial mounds. And at the bottom of one of these Indian burial mounds was an ancient Roman coin. And everybody was kind of like, whoa, how'd that get there? And so they took the coin to the University of Texas in Austin. There were two professors that looked at the coin, and they came up with different conclusions. One of the professors, who was from the East Coast, he had moved here to be a professor at the university. He had claimed that it was a World War II relic someone had brought back after the war. And they were walking along Brushy Creek. They dropped it when a rodent grabbed it and burrowed underground, and that's how it got to the bottom of an Indian burial mound. Now, the other professor knew the person who found the coin. And once he realized that person had found the coin, he called them and they spoke. And he believed 100% that it had to be an original deposit for whatever reason. He knew the person. He said they grew up together relic hunting. They learned under the same relic hunter in Georgetown, which is not far from where I am. And so without the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch topic, this is a really interesting and weird place.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been living here for a long time. And not to mention, in 2014, about 50 yards from where I grew up, my home as a child, the backyard, about 50 yards from where our backyard was, they found 3 ancient Native American burial mounds there.
Wow.
And unfortunately, in Texas, we have a really strange law where it allows the construction company to hire their own anthropologist. So a lot of times we'll get them hiring someone that's obviously in favor of the construction. So they'll just be like, "Oh yeah, nothing to see here. Go ahead and build a road over it, or build a street over it." So unfortunately, we have no idea how old these people were and where they came from. Were they part of the same tribe that was in the area? We really don't know. That's really unfortunate. We could have had some, another Neanderthal woman, the 13,000-year-old woman. But again, that just kind of explains the strangeness of the area. You take that, you take the Harryman Road, and again, like I said, I was just kind of researching all of this, and it ended up becoming the Beast of Brushy Creek documentary. And what had really caught my eye was that in 2017, we had a mountain of Bigfoot sightings. For whatever reason that was, we were getting Bigfoot sightings and encounters. We were hearing this, on Facebook and other social media platforms. It was actually rumored. I didn't see this, but I heard about it. While researching, I was in different Facebook groups asking questions. Multiple people, about 5 different people, I still have the messages. All of them told me that I needed to reach out to this one person. Apparently, this guy had taken a video of something that was walking along the Brushy Creek. Everyone had seen the video. The people that had messaged me told me that it was a clear video of this black figure, very tall and lengthy, walking near the creek. It got taken down very shortly after that. The guy was removed, and really all we have left is the original people that had seen this.
Wow.
So multiple people had told me about this, and they're like, hey, reach out to that guy. So I did reach out to him, and he told me a really incredible story. He says, yes, I did take footage of something there, but I can't talk about it. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I have all these messages. I have everything here. And that really got me interested. Like, what the heck's going on here? So shortly after that, this is all fact. You can go look at this. The FBI sent an email to the chief of police here in Round Rock saying, hey, we've heard about your, Sasquatch sightings and all the dealings that's going on in the area. We're offering you any help you need, and we're giving you a bounty of $500,000 for anyone that can provide information, capture. This is fact. This happened. I have the email. And so a lot of people played it off as like, oh, this is a publicity stunt for the county, and, the city's doing this publicity stuff. But when you look at it, it's like, why would the FBI be involved?
Yeah.
And we know the FBI was involved because the person who sent that email, I know his name, I have all this information, at the time was the head of the FBI in Texas. That's a fact. And I went and looked at his resume online. You can look at it on LinkedIn or whatever. And in there, it says that he is, in charge of 250 feet of border. He was involved in the 9/11 situation. And he is currently in charge of covert information, secret information, and 10 secret facilities inside of Texas. That's all there. It's on his LinkedIn profile. So you're wondering, like, why is this guy sending an email to the chief of police? And it kind of, if it was just one of these, things like, oh, Sasquatch breeding taking place in Round Rock, or, these ones that are obviously tourist based, or, the Bigfoot license, stuff like that, hunting license, then yeah, that all sounds kind of gimmicky. But we can trace this back to the head of the FBI in Texas. That's a fact. That's 100% fact.
I don't think the FBI can be directly involved in marketing schemes.
Exactly.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? I mean, that's not for tourism.
The fact that the guy who had taken the video said that he was approached and he can't talk and signed an NDA, that's all really like, man, this is all happening at the same time. So I had mentioned the FBI sending that email. The same day that email was sent, I believe it was June 17th, 2017. I'm not sure about that. I have to look back at my notes. But I know the same day the FBI put out that email, there was an incredibly detailed encounter on the BFRO website in the same area the FBI had referenced. So it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Are they monitoring the BFRO sites, or are they putting information up there? It's really odd and strange. The same day this happened.
Yeah.
And it took me 2 years, but I was able to track down the person who made that report. Incredibly professional person, master's degree. He definitely saw something. I believe him wholeheartedly, 100%. I am trying to get him on camera, at least maybe an audio recording of him telling his experience, because very detailed. I mean, he definitely saw something, in my opinion. The next closest sighting we have to the one that happened that day was the next day. We had 2 sightings taking place. The one, the FBI is here, whenever the sighting happens, or vice versa. The sighting could have happened, and the FBI came out. The next day, we have another sighting. Someone sees something crossing the road not far. It's still in the same county and everything like that. And, I mean, it's just like, is this a coincidence? What's going on here? Like, FBI is involved. We know that. People are seeing stuff. Facebook, social media is talking about it. So that really got my gears turning. Like, hey, something is definitely going on here.
I'm just trying to, I'm just kind of sitting here in awe right now, to be honest, because I'm not just a podcast. I mean, I am, but I've been a Bigfooter for 25 years now. And I'm thinking back, what the hell was I doing in 2017? Because before I stumbled across you this past week and went and looked at your YouTube channel, the Austin area was nowhere on my radar for Bigfoot ever. I had no idea this was even going on. And the events that you're talking about with like a video disappearing, I would have thought that I would have heard about that, but I've never heard about any of this stuff.
And that's crazy because local people, there are some people that I talk to, I've done media stuff here in town, and they're kind of unaware of it too. They're like, whoa, they put out a Bigfoot thing? When did that happen? I have to show them the email to show that it was true. It happened. So they did a really good job. I don't know. I don't want to say covering up or, whatever, but they did a good job, whatever they did.
Well, that's what I'm saying without saying it. This is pretty crazy.
No, like I said, everything I'm going to talk about here, I have documentation for. If you want to see it, I can provide it. Everything I have. And like I said, we'll circle around to this one. We'll circle around to this one towards the end because I'd like to tell you what happened when I did the FOIA request.
Yeah.
Because that's really interesting too. But again, that kind of got me wanting to know, like, hey, is there more of a paper trail with this whole Bigfoot subject? Is there other things going on here? And so I have a background in journalism, so I started hearing about certain events that were taking place, and I was like, well, let me FOIA request it, see if I can get some information on that. So there's a few cases that I've been lucky enough to do FOIA requests and get information on, various topics and incidents that have occurred in recent times and stuff that's even a little bit further back. But that's really kind of what I'm focusing on now, is finding the hard data, because I know I found it. It's true. It's a fact. But I just want to keep digging to see, like, I'm trying to find the paper trail, the breadcrumb trail that leads to, maybe we can get, maybe there's photos out there. Maybe there's, like my goal with putting out the documentary was maybe somebody saved that video from Facebook and we can get them to come forward or something like that. That was really my whole goal with that. But again, doing like these other FOIA requests, like recently I had done one for this stuff going on in Louisiana. I don't know if you heard about that. There were some kids out there in Kisatchie National Forest, and they were too scared to leave. They could not. They were surrounded by something. Something was stalking them, and it made the New York Post and a couple of other news agent organizations and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, shoot, let me do the FOIA request and see if we can get any documentation on it. And I was able to get the 911 call. I just posted that. I have the call sheets, the radio reports from there, and I have the person's future.
A few episodes ago, I had a couple guys on. They're putting on a Bigfoot conference in that area. The episode title is Louisiana Bigfoot, where they talked about that incident specifically. And one of them had actually gone out with some others and investigated the area right after it happened, and had some crazy stuff happen. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I have the coordinates. I have the actual coordinates here. And so I'm really looking forward to possibly going out there. Hopefully one of the witnesses will be able to accompany me, and we can kind of relive what took place out there.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you hear about this stuff all the time and about these cases and stuff, and really, I'm honestly kind of past the, my cousin's niece's brother saw this, and, he's got, that's not really, I'm not really interested in that. I want the hard data. I want the info that's out there, the documentation and anything like that. So, no, I did that one. I've done a few on the national parks, which I've gotten some really interesting information on some of the national park stuff. There was one FOIA request that I have that at the top of it, I've never had one like this before. At the top of it, it says, this was not approved by a supervisor. It's crazy. I had heard about this. It was a group of people that were camping in Colorado, and they had seen bone piles, and there was an alleged Bigfoot sighting in that area from these people. We have no idea to this day how the Rangers had learned about this. There's no information if it was called, if they, heard it face to face. We don't know how they got the call. it is reported in a incident summary report. It says, hey, group of people witnessed, skull or a bones and sighting of Bigfoot. And they called the people Bigfoot hunters or something like that.
Huh.
But when you read through the document, that's all it says. There's no information on there. And it says on there at the very bottom, it says the ranger did not go out to investigate due to a medical issue. Okay. Now, that was a smart way of hiding this. Okay. They had to say it was medical because when they say it's medical, that falls under the HIPAA exemption.
Right.
It's no longer FOIA accessible at that point.
I mean, they're saying that a group of people reported on federal land finding human remains, potentially at least, and that they didn't investigate or record any of the names or personal information of the reporting parties.
We have no information whatsoever. And on all the other FOIA requests I have that information. Some of it's redacted, but I mean, even the ranger's name, you're able to see the ranger who conducted it. This one, that's blacked out. We have no idea who the ranger was. All we know is that apparently they had a medical issue and that left them unable to go out there.
At that moment.
At that exact moment, right.
At that exact moment.
What's your job, dude? You're hired to investigate.
And you're not the only ranger on duty.
Exactly. You would think they would hire able-bodied, people to go out there and check this stuff out. But it's like, where is... And so all of that to me is just like, oh, come on. That's just like, red flags left and right about that stuff. And you kind of start to see that when you do a little bit of the digging. It just kind of it leads you into a weird direction, man, to be honest with you. And that's really what I'm seeing following these paper trails. It's like you'll get some stuff, yeah, but it's just like a lot of the stuff's missing, and you can get exemptions on a FOIA request. They are rare. They're very rare, but a HIPAA would be one of those exemptions. So I did the FOIA request on this one, and obviously they said they couldn't give me the information because it was HIPAA protected. But I have reached out to people in that area saying, hey, was anybody knows? Was anybody out there at this time? Just trying to figure out, maybe I get a name or some type of info because we know it happened. We know the date. We have all that stuff. But, I mean, just the report is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. It's just so short, really no information. And at the top, it says this was not approved by a supervisor. How does that work? I have no idea.
So whenever you put in these requests, what do you ask for specifically?
It really depends on what I'm looking for, how I got the information. Like if it's a Bigfoot incident like this, I'll have I heard about this through an incident summary on the national parks website. They have a huge database of just files and files, and I was lucky enough to be scanning through there and find just a little short 2-sentence thing saying, hey, incident number, whatever, group reports bone piles and seeing Bigfoot. And I was like, what the hell is that? Let me take a look at this. So with that incident summary number, I was able to do the FOIA request saying, hey, give me all the information, any documentation, everything regarding, X report or whatever. That's really what you want to do. You want to be as detailed as possible when you're doing the FOIA request. Because at that point, when you're so detailed and things happened, it makes it harder for them to deny it.
Right.
And we can kind of go into some of the more, this is going to get kind of controversial here. But I've been working on, like I said, trying to find hard data that shows, some sort of government involvement. And I believe I 100% found that. And I'm going to be working on a project to kind of compress that here and for people to see that. But if I could, can I read you this email here that kind of, not email. This is a letter. This is how old this was. So it's a fact. The government has known, they've been briefed on Bigfoot since 1969. This is factual, 100%. There's no denying it. I have the documentation here. This is a letter that was written December 15th, 1969. Dear Redacted, the president has asked me to thank you for your letter of December 4 and the brochure explaining plans for the American Yeti Expedition, 1970. Referring your letter to the Secretary of Interior. Sincerely redacted. So that's a letter that the president actually read.
And was briefed on an expedition.
100%. There was an expedition that I have all the documentation. There was an expedition that took place in 1969 where they had some success. And that's where the debrief came from. And this is pretty much saying, hey, we had some success. We want to go back out there. This is our plans for the next expedition. That's what was said. Now, I actually have the plans for the expedition, a couple of those sheets. I was able to get a couple of those. And it's wild.
Is this Department of Interior or is it just a private party?
So this is crazy. He sends this to the White House. The president sees this, and then he refers it to the Secretary of Interior. The Department of Interior is in charge of all the national parks
right
in the nation. So that's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I have documentation from the same person saying, hey, we have all the cooperation of the National Parks Department. We have all these people helping us. They had the Eddie Bauer Company, supplying them with gear. We have scientists that were out there, biologists that went out there. This happened, 100% happened. It's factual. I have the documentation to prove that. Now, they were also looking for, this is where it gets interesting. They were looking for, I don't know if they were looking for, but I think it was recommended to them about dealing with the agricultural department and possibly getting assistance from them. And I saw where they put in an application to get help with this Yeti expedition from the Department of Agriculture. That was denied. I have that saying that it was denied, saying, hey, we're only allocated a certain amount of people and funds. We can't help you out. But they had another letter saying, hey, you need to send this to the National Science Foundation. Okay. So they sent it to the National Science Foundation. I have the receipt from the National Science Foundation. I have the receipt from, I want to say, the White House saying, give them whatever they need, pretty much. I have this receipt. I have all that stuff. And that's where the trail goes cold. I would have figured where I was able to find all the documents, since I found the rejection letter from the Department of Agriculture, let me find the rejection letter for the National Science Foundation. I didn't find it. So I FOIA requested it. And the National Science Foundation, before I mentioned anything, I just said, hey, looking for documentation on, Yeti Expedition, 1969, 70, whatever. And they sent something back saying, oh, we've never heard of this, nothing. And then I was like, oh, really? Because here's your president saying they were willing to assist. And I sent that back. I sent them the letter that was there and everything. And then not even an hour later, they're like, okay, we'll look into this. We'll get back to you. So I just got it took about 2 months, their response. And they're like, yeah, we can't find any denial letter or anything like that. So I'm like, what?
How
That's
strange.
Crazy. Did the National Science Foundation get involved? Did they possibly fund this? It's wild, man. It's crazy. But we have the stuff in there saying, this is crazy too, man. This is really crazy. That in the briefing, the brochure that they're talking about here, he says, the guy who's writing this says, we have someone at Hardwick College who's willing to go pretty much off the record with whatever we find. And they wanted to, it's written in there. Who knows if it happened or not? They wanted to capture something. That was their goal. It says it on the brochure. It says that they were trying to capture or possibly kill something. Now, in the Cascade Mountains, that's where it was taking place. So they said that they had someone that worked at, I believe it was Hardwick College, that was going to be working off the books for them once they retrieved a body or they had something. It's all really crazy.
In that time frame, there's only a handful of people that could have been involved in that. And
exactly.
Surely I know somebody that knows somebody. I mean, already like two large names are popping in my head about people that could have been involved in this.
Awesome. No, so I know the person involved with this. I have all the unredacted stuff. They are still alive, believe it or not. And I am trying my hardest to get in touch with this guy. Like, hey, what do you know? Tell me. I want to know what happened. Because there's a lot of questions. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get a hold of that person. But I know who they are. But like I was telling you about the Hardwood College, they had someone off the books ready to assist with the biology portion of this. And fast forward a couple of years. I don't know if you've seen Hardwood College has a gigantic statue of a Gigantopithecus standing out there. Which you're like, what? What's going on?
What?
It's like what? How? At the same college where they could have taken a specimen, or I don't know. It's all crazy.
There's no way that's coincidence.
Right. And it's a big old scary statue they have out there of what they're saying is a Gigantopithecus. It's all just really crazy and strange. And I mean, we're even in the documentation, they're talking about like doing stuff off of the books. I mean, it's just all really like I gotta dig through some of the stuff, but it's wild. I mean, it's a fact. The government has been debriefed on it since 1969. Are they still involved? I really can't say. But from seeing some of this other stuff, it's like, man, they're hiding something. Honestly, it's like, oh, what's going on here? But no, I mean, they're talking about how much, how much they're willing to invest in this, and again, who's all involved. We've got biologists, we've got Eddie Bauer sponsoring some of this stuff, and really, what I'd seen is that what happened was they had heard about this stuff taking place in Russia in 1957 with a lot of the Yeti expeditions, and they did not want to be left out in the cold. So I believe this was somewhat kind of like a response, almost, with possibly more success.
I mean, I'm thinking about like the different situations where the government has gotten involved in investigating areas, shall we say supernatural, paranormal, whatever you want to call it. Remote viewing comes to mind. We know that they were involved in researching that. But then at a certain point, they turn it over to a private group, that's not connected to the government, so their hands aren't getting dirty, but they're still responsible and still funding it and completely involved hands-on. And it sounds like that's what you're finding out now about this.
I believe that's 100% what happened. These people were hired because you can only FOIA request up to pretty much where I'm at right now. I mean, they're talking about their salaries in there. We know this. I know this person worked for the Central Intelligence Agency. That is a fact, 100%. The same person who sent this email worked for the Central Intelligence Agency. How do I know? Is because in this briefing, he says, oh, pay me what they were paying me at the Central Intelligence. Or like he was saying, our guys, all our Central Intelligence guys will work under a G9 payment or whatever, which a G9, G11, those are all military grade pay grades, I believe. So it's like, man, it's just like, it's kind of all over here. But it's, you can deny it as much as you want, but 100% factual. And even in there, we have a letter from I want to say it's one of the president's advisors. I have a letter and it says that, hey, what do we do about the legislation about this? Pretty much. Or something like that. Legislation involving the American Yeti or some. I have the document here to prove it. But it's like, man, were they actually trying to come up with some type of laws and stuff?
I'm sure they were. I mean, there was just popping in my head. There was like a legislation besides the famous stuff in like Washington. Out in Florida,
sure.
Out in Florida, I believe there was a senator or a congressman that was pushing legislation about the skunk ape around that same time frame. So obviously those people would be in on the loop. I mean, those are the people that are leading the charge in UAP disclosure as we speak. So
sure,
I would assume this would be a similar type situation back then.
Well, you're talking about the skunk ape, and real quick, I tried to FOIA request some information on that, like the famous Mayaka skunk ape picture.
Right.
And so when I did, they said they never have any information on that, but they had over 5,000 emails regarding Bigfoot. And I'm like, holy crap, that's a lot of emails.
That's a lot of emails.
Yeah, but they wanted like $3,000 for it. And I'm like, I can't pay you $3,000 for that. Which you kind of start to see once you do some of the digging and stuff, like for the Louisiana incident, I've been told there's body cam footage for that. But they want X amount of dollars because they have to redact it. They got to blur people's faces and all this other stuff. It gets to, it should be free information, but it's really not. Like for the call that I had to pay for that. It's ridiculous. But no, I mean, they've known, I can confidently say they've known since 1969. That's provable at this point. There's no going around that. How far it got, that's really a mystery. That's really kind of like, well, and they even reference in the brochure here, they reference Tom Slick, which I thought was interesting. I've always been a really interested in the whole Tom Slick saga.
Yeah.
I've looked into it. I don't know if you've heard about these sightings that were taking place in San Antonio in the 70s. I don't know if you've heard about that. There was a bunch of sightings taking place in the South San Antonio, Texas area. I believe it was like 1976. A family had seen it multiple times. Neighbors in the area had seen a creature, whatever. And I had done a live stream about it, just kind of talking about my research into it. I was lucky enough to have the brother who was involved in the 70s reach out to me saying, hey, I was there. My whole family saw it or whatever. And he was kind of explaining it to me. And he told me something that I had no idea. He said that when they were kids around the creek where people were seeing this thing, they would follow the creek and they would go up, and there was a place that had gorillas and baboons enclosed in this area. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Maybe it was just like an escaped baboon or, something like that, gorilla. And then I started doing a little bit more digging. And for whatever reason, the park across the street was named Tom Slick Park. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I come to find out that area that was housing the gorillas and, baboons was the facility that Tom Slick himself had created, had developed. It was at the time, it was like the national biology. It was something, national biology of something. He had created this. So it's like,
wow,
you have less than 5 miles away, people seeing some type of Bigfoot creature on 2 feet. And then you have this, I believe it's an area where they now do ape, what do they call it? Like pheromones and stuff like that. I believe that type of thing.
I knew that there was a big primate research facility down there.
That was Tom Slick's.
I had no idea it was connected to Tom Slick in any way.
Exactly. So that kind of leads you to think. Like, this guy, he had everything set up.
Yeah.
If he ever had a body, he knew where to take that, to his own facility.
Yeah.
To where they could do all the research they wanted without the government's involvement. He could do pretty much, and he had the money to do it. He absolutely had the money to do it. No questions about that.
Whenever Bigfooters throw around, the idea of, what if we do get a body? Then what? He had the then what answered. He was prepared. I honestly believe that he had more than what people know. I do believe that. And then you can even go back to there's a lot of controversy about that. The Yeti hand that was smuggled out of Nepal or whatever, but that was Tom Slick. He was trying to get body parts. Where do you think they were going to test that? At his facility. Where else? That's, come on now. And that whole story is crazy.
It is, yeah. No, it's a wild story, but I mean, he had been really researching, and come to find out, there's actually going to be a podcast released about, I believe his granddaughters had found some new letters and some new documents from his adventures. So there's going to be a new podcast out.
Like Owen Wilson is playing Tom Slick.
Right, yeah. So it's going to be weird. I mean, who knows what they're going to release, but I know the Yeti is up for the Bigfoot is going to be a part of that. But, I mean, it's just all like, guys, when you do the digging and you start thinking logically, there's a paper trail for it. It's like, that's kind of speculative what we're talking about, the Tom Slick stuff. But we know they've been interested since 1969. Tom Slick died, I want to say 1962. And before that, he was the guy. They were going through him. And when he passed away, it's like, all of this stuff kind of gets taken over. Now that agency is like it's a private funded thing that he has. I don't think his family has any involvement in anymore. But I mean, that was the perfect place to just, kind of run his experiments and try to find some answers. It was all, he had the ability to do that. And I really like to do some digging. I might reach out to them. They're only in San Antonio, but I'd really like to take a look at some of those recently found letters and see, just kind of like I said, like I'm doing, just kind of digging through the archive, seeing if there's anything that pops out. Like this 1969 thing. It's kind of crazy. But like I said, I've been doing these FOIA requests and kind of circling back to the what happened in my area with the FBI investigation. I had so much information to write a crafted, really detailed Freedom of Information Act request because of all the stuff that was happening, all the publicity that was happening. The FBI put this letter out. I had the dates, I had names, I had everything I needed. So I do the FOIA request and I get back an exemption. I'm like, why did I get back an exemption if it's just a, publicity stunt or whatever, And on the exemption, it says, you're exempt for a couple of reasons. And it's like, it's an ongoing investigation. It's a national security matter, and some other really weird, like the top names are involved with it. So it's on a need to know basis. Those are really the only times you would get HIPAA would be another thing. You'd get an exemption. So why did I get an exemption for this when it's like so detailed? And, if it's just some type of publicity stunt, why wouldn't they just be like, oh, not real or something like that? No, they're saying we cannot give you that information because of one of the following things. It's a national security issue. It's people at the top echelon are involved. You really take your pick at that point.
Right.
So that's really kind of where I'm at with that one. I really don't want to poke the bear because I live here.
Right.
But, I mean, people are still seeing stuff, still reporting stuff. I had gotten an email recently about it was about a bus driver that had been, with kids, and I have the documentation for this one, that these kids were on the bus and something came out and slapped the side of the bus, and apparently these kids saw it. And the bus driver seen it and all that, and I tried to do the digging for this one, and it just kind of just dead ended. But people are still seeing things in the area. For the Harryman Road, it was I'd gotten a message from someone saying that they were on the Harryman Road, they're riding their bike, and then rocks were getting thrown at them. Less than a week later, the Harryman Road was closed. And they were saying they were doing renovations, and I went out there, took video. There was nothing going on out there. But we went out there at night. We have on video pebbles being thrown. We have this on video from out of the darkness. These pebbles are just being tossed at us. We're like, what the heck is going on? It's just wild, man.
And now again, this area that you're talking about, it doesn't seem like it's out in the middle of nowhere.
You're absolutely right about that. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but the thing is, all throughout Harryman Road, there's caves and caverns that are miles long. Actually, in 2018, right after the FBI put out that thing, there was a large cave-in in a neighborhood that was off of the Brushy Creek. And I believe they said that cavern went over 20 chambers deep into the ground. They never found the end of it. They just sealed it up and covered it up, and hey, they moved on after that. But almost every year you hear about sinkholes, you hear about caverns being discovered. And we're actually not far from the Inner Space Caverns, which is it's a cavern. It's like a little park or whatever. You can go and check out these caverns in the area. But no, I believe that we are, well, the other thing is that doing my research, I found a document from the 70s from the Texas Spelunkers group from the University of Texas. And in there, they said that there is possibly up to 3,000 undiscovered caves in Williamson County.
Wow.
Which you're like, wow, that's insane. 3,000 caves. But not only that, but if you follow the green belts, and we have some national preserves. The house that I was telling you that I grew up as a kid, where they found the Native American burial mounds. That area is a walking trail and it's a bike path. It's like 8 miles. It's crazy, and a national bird preserve. So there's no building or anything involved there. But all that stuff leads back to the Balcones Canyonlands. Now, the Balcones Canyonlands is a federal preserve. They close at 5:30, I want to say. They're not open on weekends. I think on Saturday they're not open. And there's no drones. You have to stay on the trail. It's a really weird area, the Balcones Canyonlands. Beautiful area, really untouched. No one has been able to camp out there at night. Like, it's crazy. So all the creeks off of the Balcones escarpment lead back to the Balcones Canyonlands. One of the weirdest things I ever got researching, and I've been looking forever for this picture. It was a guy who had sent me this picture from I believe it was a drone, even though it could have been a helicopter. It might have been a helicopter, actually, because it was a couple years back. But in there, they look like there is 3 cows. You think they're cows on this trail. And he even points it out. And I'm like, wow, cows? There's no cattle in the Balcones Canyonlands. Like, what is there? They just look like black blobs that are kind of, you see like a little bit of a leg and stuff. Like, what the heck is that? It's really weird. But we're speculating at that point. But you're right. It's not a in the middle of nowhere, but all roads lead back to the Balcones Canyonlands. Now, I had mentioned that sighting that took place. We had the sighting. The FBI released that thing, and then the next day we had that sighting.
Right.
That sighting was a road right off of the Balcones Canyonlands. They had seen this thing. So, I mean, was it making its way back to where it originally came from? We can only speculate. But it's just that the Balcones is, miles and miles of just, again, caverns, dense forest. You're not allowed to camp there after a certain time. You're not allowed to camp there, period. You're not allowed to be there after 6 o'clock.
That's crazy.
So it's all really strange and weird. Yeah, like what's kind of, you don't want to say they're hiding something, but it's like, man, what's going on here? Why can't we? And I'm really interested in getting a permit to possibly be out there an extended amount of time overnight, just to catch some of the more interesting wildlife out there. No one's ever captured anything out there at night. So it'd be interesting. Maybe we get some cougars or even a black bear. We don't have bears in the area, but who knows?
So I watched the Brushy Creek, the Beast of Brushy Creek documentary that you did.
Yeah,
enjoyed it tremendously. It was very eye-opening for me. Information, like I said, that I was completely unaware of. I had known about the sinkhole incident.
Okay, yeah.
But whenever I heard about it, it was just that there was a sinkhole in the area. I didn't know that it led to this huge cave system underground. I had no idea about all the caves and stuff. But one of the things that I kind of picked up from your documentary was that this area, this Brushy Creek area, is another one of those places that you constantly run across if you get involved in anything unexplained, where it's not just one thing happening. It's a location where there's just weird stuff all the time.
Yeah. I mean, like I can go into detail about some of the stuff in my documentary. Like we had a guy that I interviewed, and he talked about seeing this green light that followed his car.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, actually, I think it was in 2020, 2021, there was we had a green streak of light pass through, and on the news, I remember this. I have the clip somewhere. The whoever it was, they brought someone, astronomer, I believe, to kind of explain what was going on, and she explained it as a once in a lifetime, like 1 in 5 million, occurrence you'd be able to see. And I was like, really? Because I interviewed a guy who saw the same thing, like several years back. Like, it's a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, there must be about 50 million people around here then, because.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird. And then you can kind of go into the the human element of some of the weird stuff going on here too. Like there has always been an occult presence here. That's factual. And growing up, you'd hear about that. And in the documentary, I kind of touched base on that. Like growing up, I had heard about this spot where my friends had discovered a decapitated deer in like some, strange other surroundings in that area. So we had gone back out there because, they wanted to show me and stuff. And we go back out there and there was no deer, but there was actually a decapitated dog out there, which you're like, holy crap, that's really scary.
Yeah.
And a bunch of really crazy writings and stuff like that. So like I said, I had been researching and reaching out to people in different groups and stuff. And this one person had reached out to me. Now, I had an encounter in 2011, right off of the Brushy Creek. It wasn't visual. It was just, I'd like to say it was like a bluff charge. I go into detail about that in some other videos I've done. But that same year, 2011, was the worst drought we've ever had in Texas. So the areas of the Brushy Creek were accessible where they hadn't been before. Caves were accessible where they hadn't been before. Walking along the Brushy Creek, we were seeing all these new, like, oh, look at that, like caves all over the place. And so that's when I had an encounter in there. And someone had reached out to me saying, hey, I have the emails and stuff. I had to kind of get it out of him because he was saying that his wife had seen some strange happenings and stuff. And I get it out of him saying his wife was walking their kids along this trail that I had mentioned where they find the human burial grounds. There's been Bigfoot sightings. That's where the FBI had listed that, the wanted poster or whatever. And he says that his wife had seen 5 cloaked figures in a very dry area of the creek, burning a candle and doing some type of ritual out there. This is what he says. I have it written down.
So creepy.
And you're like, what the heck? And so he said his wife seen that, turned around, and like they just left. I was like, that's crazy. So I've been wanting to get her to interview, but she's terrified. She would have to do it obviously with some type of, covering her identity or something like that.
Yeah.
But you're kind of wondering, like, does that have anything to do with the Bigfoot sightings in the area? And in the Brushy Creek documentary, I got a little bit of heat because people were like, oh, this is not 100% Bigfoot based. And I really wasn't going for a Bigfoot based documentary. I was going for an area documentary. Like, look at all this crazy stuff happening in the area. And it's just like, again, like I said, you take the ancient stuff that was taking place, kind of weird. You take the Bigfoot scenario, the Hairy Man Road stuff that's been here since, the rumor since the 1800s. And then you take the modern stuff with the FBI surging out here. You really kind of wonder, like, what the heck is going on out there?
Yeah, why would they be interested in something like that?
Exactly. Just really leads to more questions.
And then you had an interview with that guy who was former military and former police officer who had the photo of a figure. Now,
right.
I'm just going to say it. Couldn't see much in the photo.
Yeah.
But the fact that he took the photo supports his story of what he witnessed with another guy that he was with, I guess. And they had ran across that woman. And that, I mean, maybe that could have possibly been a juvenile Bigfoot, but it could have been something else. It just a really weird figure on 2 legs, a weird incident, and during broad daylight. So that's another thing in the notch of the belt of weirdness for that area.
No, and I had to coax it out of him. He didn't want to go on film or anything. He was like, "Oh, let me just call you and we'll talk about it." I was like, I'd like to go back to the location you showed me and stuff like that. And so, luckily enough, we did, and he went into kind of greater detail. And yeah, like you said, military guy, very highly educated, and he was very sincere. And the story is kind of like. You hear about that. You hear about that stuff on the Brushy Creek. People there was an incident where I started doing the research where one woman had reached out to me saying she had seen a giant lemur in a tree. I was like, what the heck? Off of the Brushy Creek Trail. And I had reached out to a woman who was kind of the holder of the Hairy Man Road story. Like she would be at libraries kind of telling the story and stuff. And I had been talking with her and I mentioned the lemur thing. And she's like, "Oh my God, I saw a lemur myself in that same area." I was like, "What? Why are these people saying they're seeing like a giant lemur? That's kind of just crazy." But again, it's just kind of the weirdness
Yeah.
of the area. It's, even you go back to the to like the earlier settlers that were here, the Tonkawa tribe, which was a really weird tribe in themselves. They did not, commiserate or befriend a lot of the tribes in the area. They were kind of standoffish off to themselves. Not only that, but they had a lot of strange practices. They were covered in full body tattoos, which to me, that sounds more of a like an islander type of thing, Pacific Islander thing. Covered in full tattoos. They would bury their dead standing up, which is kind of interesting, I thought. And they worship a giant wolf. Every year they had a celebration for a giant wolf that they would dance for. They would put on wolf pelts and they would dance around for like 3 or 4 days celebrating this wolf deity. And they celebrated him because the wolf pretty much symbolized their way of life. They were hunters. They were not farmers, and they never wanted to be farmers. They were hunters, and they would kill for their food. But unfortunately, with the settlers coming in the area, they were forced out, and I believe up to your neck of the woods there in Oklahoma, to where they reside now, unfortunately. But and I've always wondered, with the tribe or the people they found in 2014 behind my house, were those people Tonkawa? Were they older? I would have loved to just get some more information on who those people were, the 3 people they found there.
Did you hear any stories out of the construction worker guys that you videoed?
Oh, yeah, no. So I went out there kind of with a hidden camera, I should say. Semi-hidden
right. Discreet
and I was
camera.
There you go, discreet camera, there you go. And so I'm out there talking to some of the construction workers, and one guy, I'm like, hey, Harryman Road, have you seen anything or heard anything crazy? And he's like, no. He's like, well, actually, you see that guy over there? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, he said he saw a giant shadow peeking out from the trees. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Let me go talk to that guy. And so I went and talked to that guy, and he actually pointed me in the direction of 2 caves. There were 3 caves. He was able to show me where 2 of them were. And he said there was another cave that he had seen deer coming out of. And I was like, wow, that's gotta be a huge cave of deer coming out of here. And I was like, that's insane. But when you're in the Brushy Creek area, especially the Harryman Road area, and you're not on a trail or the road, it's a very dangerous area. Like we talked about the sinkholes, that's a real thing, man. You have to watch where you're stepping. Sinkholes, not to mention, all the other critters we have, your rattlesnakes and all that type of stuff. So I was able to find 2 of the caves, and one of them is just gigantic, and I believe some of that's in the Brushy Creek documentary. But they look like tunnels. It's just like really weird. They almost look like tunnels, and who knows how deep they go. But now those are all graded up. They're caged up. You can't really go there anymore, which I thought was kind of weird. After the documentary came out, they started doing that. So I'm like, man, what the heck?
It's just bugging me. I have to ask you about it, and I hate to. I know you want people to watch the documentary, and I again encourage them to watch the documentary. And I'm not trying to give anything away, but that one cave with the metal door, man.
Yes.
What is the freaking deal?
Yeah. I can't explain that. I've talked to different people about that. I have no idea what that was for. You're talking about the giant cave that had like a 4-foot face carved into it.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Clearly a structure that somebody made out of a cave with a giant armored door that only locks from the outside, which makes 0 sense. Yeah. I mean,
no, it's a giant. Yeah. No, that door is rated to withstand a nuclear blast. That's crazy. How that got down there, how everything got constructed, I have no idea. And then it was buried up. They tried to cover it up. And the only way it was discovered was these construction workers were building a road nearby. And it's in the documentary. They find this cave, and they are scared to death.
Yeah.
They're not going in there. And they're like, what the hell is this? It's crazy. And that actually took me about 2 weeks to find. I did not have the actual location for it. I just knew the construction workers did not want to go back there. And I was like, hey, take me back to what we're doing. Like, nope, no way we're going back. So they just told me about the general area. And so I went, and with some GPS imaging, I was able to find it, and took about 2 weeks to actually, oh, here it is. Because the brush was just insanely dense in that spot. So we find it, and there's like, stairs carved into it. There's obviously a gigantic face that is not a human face, in my opinion.
No. I don't know if it's a troll or what it is, but
right, yeah. Just really strange features on it. It itself looks like it has possibly tattoo markings, or maybe even hair. That could be what they're trying to symbolize as hair, honestly. But yeah, I mean, it's a gigantic steel door that only locks from the outside. And going in there into this cavern was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done, because it was me and my friend David. We didn't expect to find it. We thought it was another weekend we weren't going to find it. So we're out there and we find it. We are very ill prepared. We only have like one flashlight that sucked. Our phones were actually brighter than the flashlight. So we're out, we go in there and we walk, and we never found the end of it. It was just a maze of, you can go this way, you can go that way. And it was again, the only way in and out would be through this steel door that only locks from the outside. And it had that, and it had breathing holes in it. So a lot of people were like, oh, that's just a bunker, or that's where people were stashing their moonshine and stuff. Well, why does it have breathing holes? And,
yeah.
Why does it have a gigantic stone face if it's just, hiding booze or whatever?
It doesn't matter what it was. I mean, it does, but it was used for nefarious reasons, no matter how you look at
100%.
it.
100%. No, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. It was used. Nothing good happened.
No, nothing at all.
No. Yeah. And no, people have speculated about different stuff. I know, Doug Hychek from Monster Quest, he was like, oh, that's where they kept a Bigfoot. And I was like, I don't know. You could argue that. But, yeah, man, it's just, you think about that, and then you think about the hairy man myth. Who put it in there? Yeah, exactly. And then in that spelunking document that I had mentioned, where they said there's over 3,000 undiscovered caves, they mentioned caves that were discovered. And this cave is not on there. It is not on there. And they go into detail about some other caves, like, like the Breathing Cave, for instance. I haven't talked about the Breathing Cave. There's a cave that was called Breathing Cave. And they called it Breathing Cave because you'd be able to put a 2x4 in there, and a gust of wind would shoot it out outside of this entrance of this cave.
Jeez.
And the university went out there to do all their calculations and stuff. And they surmised that what was happening was almost like a gun scenario. You have a very large chamber at the bottom that had airflow forcing air into this smaller chamber that created this effect. And they were kind of puzzled because their calculations, the gigantic chamber underneath the smaller chamber would have had to have been the size of like a stadium. So they're like, no, they're like, this can't be right. Our numbers aren't right. We got to come back and test this again. They never did. So, I mean, you kind of think about like, holy crap, a stadium sized underneath, the Brushy Creek area. That's wild to think about. It's not, unfeasible when you think about all the caverns and caves, but could they connect somewhere underground? That's an interesting theory.
Again, Texas is not the place you think of for caves.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you don't think about that. You think of, just deserts, or I don't know what people think about Texas, but yeah, you don't think about caves and cavern systems. But I honestly think we have a cavern system here, an undiscovered cavern system here that would rival the Mammoth Cave system in Kentucky. And I would really love for, some group or something. Okay, I'll give you another example. Just thinking about this now. They have Longhorn Cave, which is just south of us. They recently found giant saber-toothed cat remains like 4 miles in this cave.
Wow.
In complete darkness. They're like, how did the cats get all the way back here? It's pitch black. But they are going about 4 miles into the ground, which is insane. Another incident is that we had a cave, I believe it's chambered off now, but it was called Airman's Cave here in Austin. And there's a really interesting article. I think only like a handful of people have ever been to the end of this cave. And there's a really cool article about these kids that went in there, and it said it took them about 12 hours to get to the end of the cave from when they started.
What?
And this involved crawling on their hands and knees at some point, and some points it was very large where they were able to walk. And by the time they got to the end of this cave, they said that they were exhausted. It was already night outside, and they were just super exhausted. But other people have, I think there's a couple other people who have gotten to the end of this cave and described the same thing. This guy describes two large crystals popping out of the sides of these caves. Giant crystals like the ones you've seen in like the Superman movies popping out of this cave. And you're just kind of like, what the hell is that doing there? It makes no sense. But again, this is just another weird instance of Central Texas, man.
I mean, what is going on?
I'll tell you one more weird thing that happened that was in 2023. There was an unidentified flying object flying over the Central Texas area. I have the document from NORAD saying they scrambled two jets from Colorado to investigate what this thing was. And I believe they said it was like, typical weather balloon thing or whatever. But it's like, oh, you're scrambling jets from Colorado?
For weather balloons?
For weather balloons, yeah. Yeah, but over the Brushy Creek again. So it's just, I don't know what to think at this point. I'm just trying to gather everything and say, hey, look at this. Look at all this weird stuff. Does it connect? I have no idea, honestly. But it's just you can't avoid the weird. You can almost talk to anybody that's been here for over 10 years and something, and they'll tell you something strange that's happened to them on one of the trails, or they're out late fishing, or whatever. You'll hear about these things when you talk to the community, and I didn't realize how vivid it was until I started talking to people. It's like my best friend growing up. I had not told him about what had happened to me, but he described his encounter in my Hairy Man Road documentary, and it's exactly what happened to me. He was rushed by something aggressive that chased him off of the creek. And then again, people were just reaching out to me saying, hey, I experienced the exact same thing. We were fishing up the creek. Something came splashing towards us. We were scared. We left. The woman I told you about, who was kind of like the holder of the Hairy Man Road story, she told me about her son was in a Boy Scout troop that was camping along the Brushy Creek. These kids were like 15, 16-year-old. There's like 20 of them. Maybe not 20, like 10 or 15. And they were so scared, they left the Brushy Creek because something was doing this mock, rushing them, or, bluff charge, I guess. So it's so weird that so many people that have never met are talking about the same exact thing. Not only that, but I had mentioned the construction worker who said he had seen a shadow peek out behind the tree.
Yeah.
So my friend that I'm telling you about, his girlfriend said the exact same thing in the same area off of Hairy Man Road. She said that she had seen these shadow people poking their heads out from these trees.
Wow.
It's like, what? They've never met. This is like 20 years apart. What the hell's going on here? They're telling the same story. And again, talking with those construction workers, I asked them, I was like, hey, have you ever heard of, Hairy Man Road, or, how the story got here? And he's like, oh, yeah, someone saw Bigfoot out here or whatever. And then he proceeds to tell me that multiple people have been killed by trees out there. Hit by trees. I'm like, hit by trees? What? That makes no sense.
Do you think there might be like some sort of curse on the area?
I don't know, man. Honestly, I've heard a little bit of everything.
I mean, there was that one older native lady that you interviewed about her.
Oh yes,
her
yeah,
sighting,
yeah.
and it went into the paranormal. It was definitely different, and I don't know, just so many similarities between the stuff you've uncovered and talked about and the stories you're relaying to like some places here in Oklahoma. Especially some of the native communities.
Well, I mean, we kind of shared the same native communities, honestly. Like they were here and they went up there, and that's a real thing. It happened. But no, I've heard the curse theory before. I've heard people say like, "Oh, it's cursed because of this and that," and there was someone killed something they shouldn't have, and all this other stuff. And it's like, man, what? There's really, again, we're speculating, but it's just kind of, it's just all really weird that it's happening here in this area that again, you really don't hear anything about. You don't hear about this stuff. You hear about, like you said, some place in Oklahoma, you hear about some Skinwalker Ranch stuff. You hear about like the Nahanni Valley in Canada. But this area, the Brushy Creek, I think it can rival, or it's as much as going on here than what's going on there. I mean, again, the Hairy Man Road story dates back to the 1800s. Yeah. People seeing something up until then? Like, it's just wild, man. And, like I said, the NORAD scrambling the UFO, the freaking, the astronomer saying, oh, we have these green lights. They're like one in a million. And I got people who said they've seen them multiple times. It's just really weird and fascinating. And I'm doing my best just to kind of document what is taking place in the Brushy Creek area, man. And that we haven't even talked about the bodies, and I don't know if we want to talk about the bodies.
And we haven't even talked about the bodies. But people can check that out on your YouTube channel. Tell everybody your stuff, man. How can they get a hold of you and all that?
Yeah, you can check me out on YouTube, Media Palace, my website, mediapalace.net. If you want to email me, it's ericmediapalace@gmail.com. If you're in the Central Texas area, I'd really like to hear from you if you have any interesting insight into what we're talking about. If you have that video, hey, let me know. I was taken in 2017, but if you feel free to get a hold of me, and I'm working on the Expedition Brushy Creek, where you saw the excerpt where we interviewed that Native woman. And the Expedition Brushy Creek is going to have the footage where the pebbles were being thrown. So that should be coming out here probably within the week.
Awesome.
So please check that out. Yeah.
Looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, the documentary Beast of Brushy Creek is on streaming platforms, Amazon Tubi. It's on my YouTube channel. I also have the Legend of Hairy Man Road. It's on a couple of platforms. It's on my YouTube channel as well. So please check it out.
And I will post a link in the description below whenever this episode comes out. So if you're listening, scroll down, check it out.
Yeah. Thank you, please.
Eric, thanks for joining me, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward to some off-air conversations in the future, man.
Definitely. I look forward to it, Matt. I appreciate you inviting me on, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you've had your own encounter with the Hairy Man or a poltergeist or a UFO, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to all the past episodes, social media, merchandise, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.